Across the United States right now, we've got mayors, we've got governors, some governors, we've got police chiefs, all trying to figure out how to contain the ongoing violence that has got a little bit of an upward trajectory. It's not going down, it's going up. Now you might say, oh, this certain statistic, this is going down, and these certain crimes have gone down. If you talk to any cop, if you talk to any mayor in any city that has a population of note, you're going to hear the same thing, whether they're Republican, whether they're Democratic. You know what? Crime is increasing. Here in Seattle, our mayor has come right out and said, hey, there's a correlation between the homeless encampments and the violence and crime that's coming out of them. Story I'm going to read you today is a prime example of that. It's wild. My youngest son sent me this story on Friday, and I hadn't seen the story yet. And I'm like, holy cow, that is brutal. And I thought maybe, and it was a brand new story, and I just hadn't seen it. So my kid beat me to it. Well done, Brennan. Nice job. So looking at this story, I'm like, that is so violent. This has got to be a really old story. Nah, it's brand new. It's just another prime example of Seattle is thriving. Let's jump on into it. Before we do, if you're new here, welcome. My name is Sean Reynolds. I own a couple of real estate companies. Why wouldn't I read stories like this? I mean, it's just what we're doing. All right. Shooting and a stabbing attack by a woman at Seattle homeless camp caught on camera. We're going to watch this video. Now, if you're not into this kind of thing, maybe you should just hit the old pause button for a little bit here. Or fast forward, I should say. Fast forward. Pause doesn't get you anywhere. It's just, you got a picture of me doing that, and nobody needs to see that. Let's jump on in. Let's just take a quick look at this video, and you can see an example of the kind of crime that's going on, that everybody's like, oh, let the homeless people be fun. Let them do their own thing. They're fine. They're not hurting anybody. All right. Watch the video. See what you think. Here we go.
And over and over.
New at 10, frustration and anger over growing crime at homeless encampments. 𝐏𝐞𝐬𝐬 has exclusive new video from a stabbing and shooting at an encampment in Seattle. The suspect is still out there. Prosecutors say she faces a felony assault charge.
The violent attack happened right before Mayor Bruce Harrell said crime at homeless camps are directly linked. In this Operation Crime and Justice report, 𝐏𝐞𝐬's Tammy Matassa live tonight with why prosecutors want that attacker caught. Tammy?
Preston, we talked to the victim at the encampment. His arm is still in a cast and he had to go to the hospital, but he didn't feel comfortable sharing his story. Now, prosecutors are worried the attacker is a danger to this community because he's done this before. And I have to warn you, that video is disturbing.
It's just happening over and over and over.
The video is hard to believe, yet it captures the reality of life on the streets for many homeless. A woman plunges a knife into an unsuspecting man, severely injuring him. The victim stumbles to his tent along 13th Avenue South. Police say he grabs an AK-47 style rifle and fires at her. He collapses. Then a second man shoots at her again, but she escapes.
I don't think there's any accountability for most of these things, and that happens again and again.
The day of the attack, Wendy Dibdahl was shopping at Goodwill next door.
There was a little girl in a car here, and she was scared to death, of course, and her mom just said, lay down in the seat and just stay there until it's safe.
Police confiscated these 3 rifles and several rounds of ammunition from the victim's tent.
I think what's concerning about this case is the level of violence. When you see
So you've just got mayhem. You've got, for those of you in the audio portion, I'm going to walk you through this shooting. So you've got a couple of guys who are on the sidewalk. It looks like it's kind of an alleyway. It's behind a public storage complex, a 2-story kind of public storage complex. They're in the alleyway behind. There's like 3 people that are bent over, facing away from the alley, their backs to the alley. They're picking up food. They're doing stuff like that. They're just, looks like they're organizing stuff on the sidewalk. This woman comes up behind them, very close behind them, does kind of a hard 90-degree turn, and literally just comes up behind the one guy bending over and just stabs him right in the gut, and then hustles right off. One of the 3 guys kind of says, hey, what are you doing? The guy who gets stabbed, he stumbles off, grabs his AK-47, as you do, right? I mean, you've got one in your tent if you're in Seattle. just amazing that this stuff is going on right in our streets. And we're just kind of like, it's okay. Back to the story. So he grabs his AK-47, starts taking shots at the gal who stabbed him. Well, he stumbles off and collapses because he got stabbed in the gut, right? And it lacerated, I think, his kidneys and his stomach. And, I mean, it's not funny at all. It's just like, okay, so this guy, he stumbles off after being stabbed and trying to shoot his, the person that's stabbing him. And so then another one of his buddies, one of the three guys lined up on the street there, he grabs, is it the same rifle? I can't really tell. There were 3 rifles in this encampment in a tent. So the guy either grabs the AK-47 or grabs another rifle and starts shooting at the gal again. Just starts shooting at her. This is all going on during the middle of the day. It's literally, this is beyond the Wild West. They didn't have AKs back then, right? I mean, this is just, it's absolutely crazy. So that's description. And the reason these stories are important because the mayor of Seattle and mayors of other cities right now are trying to figure out, what do we do? How do we stop this? What triage do we perform here to get some of this violence to stop? Because the shootings, you might say that some other smaller acts of violence, those crimes have been reduced. My theory on that is we've reduced so many crimes to misdemeanor that our statistics are, if you state that a crime is no longer a crime, those crime stats, they're going to drop. I think that's a lot of what you've seen. And some crimes during the pandemic, they went down because everybody's at home and you just didn't have the same opportunities for criminals. You had different kind of opportunities. And those are the opportunities we're talking about now. And by opportunities, I mean criminals just doing criminal things, right? Like walking up behind somebody and stabbing them and running off and maybe getting shot, maybe not getting shot. But for this particular instance to end in just one guy being stabbed, that's a minor miracle. Because you got somebody out there with an AK-47 just cranking off rounds. I mean, how's that going to end? Probably not good. In this case, it's like, just a car got a bullet hole in it. I was reading a story about a guy down in Kent, which is probably 10, 15 miles south of downtown Seattle, and he was asleep and a bullet came through his wall in the middle of the night and hit him in the shin. Could you imagine? You're asleep. You're dreaming whatever you're dreaming about. And all of a sudden you wake up and you've got a sharp pain in your shin. You're like, what the heck is wrong? I wake up with those pains because it's usually cramping from some workout I've done and too much creatine, not enough water. That's a different story. I'm not getting shot in the shin. This dude down in Kent gets shot in the shin while he's asleep in the middle of the night. Just that kind of stuff going on. It's just, it's ongoing. And I read these stories to a lot of people, just like, hey, what'd you podcast on today? Well, we talked about this. And if you tell people these stories enough, they become aware and they start looking for these stories like you might well do. You might be like, hey, let's go see what Sean's got going on. What crazy story does Sean have going on? Well, here's another one, right? Police in Seattle are searching for a homeless woman accused of a violent attack on a homeless man who was stabbed and shot during an assault that was captured on a surveillance camera. I think the really interesting thing about this one is that from, I believe it's the second floor, it's probably about 20 feet up in the air would be my total guess on where this camera was located. But it had bird's eye view just straight down on this whole thing going on. So that's how you can see this woman kind of just stealthily walking up behind and then giving the big heave-ho right to the guy's midsection with what you can see in slow-mo is, I don't know, probably a 6-inch bladed knife. It's like I wanted to say David Bowie knife, but, it's a Bowie knife, if you know what that is, just, big like hunting knife. Not a David Bowie knife. No, I don't think David Bowie ever had knives. That's one thing he didn't have in his outfit, right? Prosecutors said Arias Beckett-Sumpay, 28, has been charged with felony assault, but she remained at large as of Friday evening. She is also known as Lady Gangsta. Lady Gangsta. Yeah, that's her name. So she is known to commit these kinds of crimes. She's already got a felony assault, a stabbing. She's got 24 arrest warrants, various stages. She's got 2019 felony assault conviction. Got 3 other felonies, 7 gross misdemeanors, and 24 arrest warrants, and a partridge in a pear tree of crime. So you got these folks running around. I am wondering if she's on that list of high utility offenders that are going. I can't remember the term that our new Seattle City Council or our new Seattle attorney came up with that kind of identified, I think it was like 114 of Seattle's most prolific criminals, and they're responsible for like 2,500 crimes. Is she on this list? Is Lady Gangster on this list? About to find out, right? The violent attack occurred just days before Mayor Bruce Harrell publicly identified the correlation between rising crime rates and homeless camps. It doesn't take a genius to figure this out. But again, like I go back to, unless you're aware of this stuff going on and you kind of, if you kind of put in the back of your mind, all right, that was another stabbing on 3rd and whatever. And maybe you do this in your own community too. Maybe you live in San Francisco and you've just got storylines all day long. Or Portland, same thing. Chicago, Washington, D.C., Philadelphia. I mean, pick your city, right? If you follow these storylines, I think you'll come to the same conclusion I do. This isn't getting better. This is getting worse. So what are we going to do? Somebody's going to have to get a hold of it. Otherwise, we're just going to live in utter lawlessness. And it kind of seems like that's where we're at in these areas with the homeless encampments. So the video is difficult to watch, but it captures the reality of life on the streets for many homeless people in Seattle. And that's one of the things that I continuously harp about is that say you've got some family that's down on their luck, legit. They're not doing drugs. Mom and dad are trying, or dad and dad, or mom and mom, whatever it might be. They're trying to work out how they're going to get back on their feet. Got a couple of kids living with them in a tent. That seems pretty rare. I have very, very rarely seen that on the streets of Seattle. I don't know if I've ever seen it from like a family standpoint. Anyway, say that's a thing. It's not them that you worry about. It's the other guy with the AK-47 or the other 2 rifles or Lady Gangster running around with a knife stabbing people. That's what you worry about on top of all the other nonsense going on. It's just not a safe environment at all. And these stories, not a lot of people cover them because it's like, oh, geez, that's not good. Let's ignore that. Maybe it'll go away. The suspect was seen plunging a knife into unsuspecting man as he picked up food, slashing his liver, spleen, and intestines. That's not a good day. That's going to leave a big mark. Police said the victim stumbled to his tent along 13th Avenue South and Lane Street, then grabbed an AK-47 style rifle and fired at her. The man misses and collapsed a few minutes later. As you do once you've been stabbed and you have your liver, spleen, and intestines slashed. It's just wildly out of control, right? This is truly unreasonable. There's just no other words. And that's a really nice way of putting it. I read these stories and I'm like, holy cow, what are we even doing? And by we, I mean these psychopaths or I guess just convicted criminals. That's what they're doing. They're just running around, doing whatever they want. And there doesn't really seem to be an end in sight. I know we've got plans. I know we've got things that we're talking about doing. Okay, I'm willing to give those a shot. New mayor, hey, new mayor, do your thing. And it's going to take a long time for these things to come forth as far as anything you put into action now. It's going to take a while to bring this stuff back around because this stuff's out of control. Police said a second man was also seen retrieving the rifle and shooting at the woman, but she escaped. On the day of the attack, Wendy Dibdahl was shopping at a Goodwill thrift store next door. I don't think there's any accountability for most of the things, and it happens again and again, she said. There was a little girl in a car here, and she was scared to death, of course. Well, as you've got a ruckus with like 4 people in the homeless encampment, on the street, on the sidewalk. Now, one woman runs up, jabs somebody with a big knife, and then you've got the shootout by two different guys. And one guy cranks off a couple of rounds, and he passes out because he's had his spleen. It's just wild stuff. And then her mom said, the little girl said, she was scared to death, of course, and her mom said, lay down in the seat and stay there until it's safe. Well, what if you got a bullet whizzing through the door? Yeah. Wild stuff, right? I mean, this is literally shootout in Seattle. Police, and this is the International District, I believe. It's always had its fair share of crime, but it's also an area that's been a hot spot where the police have really focused. But I'm seeing more and more rumors of, the whack-a-mole on crimes. You scoot them off this block, they're going to show up in alleyways, wherever. They're going to figure out a place. And there's more of that, more and more of that happening, because just because the police show up every day in a certain corner doesn't mean that these criminals go away. They go somewhere else. They don't go away. Seattle police confiscated 3 rifles and several rounds of ammunition from the victim's tent. I think what's concerning about this case is the level of violence, said 𝐏𝐞𝐚𝐬𝐥𝐿, spokesman for the King County Prosecutor's Office. When you see that video, that's really disturbing. It is. And that's why I played it. Because I think people need to know this is what's going on. This is your reality. This is why we need to come up with some solutions where you don't have people living in large encampments and you've got folks that are committing crimes actually doing time. That's largely how I see this thing going. And in a city like Seattle, it's going to take a while. Our city prosecutor right now has to drop 2,000 cases so they can get back on top of the current cases that are coming in, because it's easier to convict on the current cases. The old ones, it's kind of like, all right, that's pretty stale. I don't think we can do much with that one. Do we even try it? So they're just dismissing 2,000 cases. How'd you like to be one of the victims of the crimes in some of that stuff going on? All of a sudden, yeah, we're not prosecuting the crime against you. Oh, yeah, that sucks. And it does. It really does suck. But at this point in time, when I think we've got a backup of 5,000 cases of criminal activity in the city of Seattle due to whole COVID, and couldn't do an in-person judge kind of deal or jury kind of deal. That just didn't happen. So the whole system, the whole criminal system or justice system got backed up. So the new city prosecutor new city attorney is having to say, all right, we got to do something. We got to get back on track here. Cut those 2,000 loose. We're going to focus on the current ones. We're going to go after the most prolific offenders. Just wild stuff, right? Prosecutors say Beckett-Sumpay has been convicted in the past of another stabbing at a homeless camp in 2019. This is nothing new. 3 years later, here she is, just back at it. Maybe she's been practicing. Maybe she's got a routine down. It seems like it because she booked it out of there pretty quick, even after having been shot at with an AK-47. The woman's rap sheet includes 3 felonies, 7 gross misdemeanors, and at least 6 assault misdemeanors, and at least 24 arrest warrants. What is this person doing on the streets? Seriously, what is this person doing on the streets? Lock her up. Give her a 10-year stint. Just give her a 10-year stint. Get her off the streets. The idea that anybody can do whatever they want in an encampment is not true for felony crimes, and it hasn't been, 𝐏𝐞𝐚𝐬𝐥𝐿 said. Okay, but I think the people who didn't get this memo are the criminals doing the crimes, because they do seem to be doing whatever the F they want. They're running around in broad daylight, stabbing one another. And then they just pick up guns and, I'm just going to pop off a few rounds. Maybe I'll hit her. Maybe I won't. I mean, that is literally the epitome of doing whatever you want. And there are no consequences. Got to catch them, got to prosecute them, got to put them away. And I think the police in a lot of these instances, you'll hear, they're doing the best they can and they are bringing these cases in. How about if you're a cop? You're a cop on one of those 2,000 cases that gets dismissed. You did your job. You did your job. And then all of a sudden the city is saying, I got to let this go. How frustrating. But, you know, when you go through the coronavirus and all the nonsense that's associated with that, we're shutting this business down, this one, you're essential, not essential, essential. You know what? We're going to let you be essential and we're going to let your business survive this epidemic. You know, just all the stuff that we're having to overcome now as a result of what we went through in 2020 and 2021. You know, some hard decisions are being made, and this is what we're doing. But to say that the idea that anybody can do whatever they want in an encampment is not true for felony crimes, it seems like it is. You get what I'm saying? It is. You can do whatever you want. You know, the guy goes on to say, it doesn't matter where you live. You can live in an encampment or you can live in Medina, and we're going to charge a felony crime the same way. The key is it has to be referred to us. All right. He is saying, hey, not our problem. Cops got to get it to us. Okay. So yes, they do. Yes, they do. But it's this whole system of you got so much of this activity going on. You've got what, maybe 900 cops in the city? A stabbing? Yeah, that's pretty important. But if, you know, something else goes on, all right, yeah, we didn't get her. We don't know where she is. We'll keep an eye out for her. Hope that she commits another crime and we catch her then. That's literally what's going to go on. I hope they get her. I hope they lock her up. And I hope they lock her up for a long time. So the stabbing and shooting are just another example of the spike in crime that Mayor Bruce Harrell recently acknowledged is directly connected to homeless camps. 1 out of every 5 shooting going on right now has some connection to homeless encampments in Seattle. 20%. 20%. And people want to say, it's okay. It's okay to have homeless encampments. They don't hurt anybody. They just do their own thing. They're down on their luck. They're trying to get back on their feet. Yeah, maybe some of them. But you can see the trend here. You can see of all the stories that I've read here. These are not people looking for their next sandwich. These are convicted criminals running around, committing their crimes, basically just unabated. 𝐏𝐞𝐬𝐬 News recently asked Mayor Bruce what the plan is now that he's made the connection. What I will say and react is the fact that I have less than 900 officers that I inherited, he said. We're going to get our public safety strength up. All right. You're going to have to hire a bunch of cops. Meanwhile, city council, they're trying to figure out, do we do incentive bonuses or do we not? I mean, we're going to make budgeting decisions and ask for money to reflect the need for effective public safety. I don't know how you're going to get public safety up right now. Nobody wants to be a cop in Seattle. Would you want to deal with this stuff? I just had an email from somebody that I correspond with regularly down in Portland, and he was talking about one of the calls that he was out on. And major story, I'll probably podcast it. But it's another one where you've just got a meth head doing some just crazy stuff. And, the mayor of Portland just not able to get a handle on any of this. I mean, city council down there, this goes way over their head. Just, you know what I mean? They're not able to handle this stuff at all. So it feels like it's getting worse and worse. Another interesting thing that it came up, I think it was yesterday, maybe the day before, was that Seattle lost another 30 police officers. They hired a handful, but they lost a bunch more. So the net out migration in, I believe it was March, was like another 30 police officers. Can't remember the exact number, but it was like, that's not the right direction we're going in. You had more cops leave than you brought in. That's a negative. That is a CNN minus, right? So, plus the mayor said that he's met with community-based groups about doing more outreach. I think that's good. Anything you can do is great. But, this person running around in a homeless encampment stabbing somebody, community outreach or not, is not going to do much, right? You need to get these people off the street. We're ready for it, and we're trying to make this city safe for everybody, he said. As the trend continues, those who are caught in the middle of the crimes hope things change fast. I do feel safe in the morning, Dibdal said. I would never stay here after dark. Never. It's just too dangerous. Beckett-Sumpay is scheduled to be arraigned on April 28th. Prosecutors say if she doesn't show up, another warrant will be issued for her arrest. she's not going to show up. Why would she? She's out just running around, doing her thing, clearly just doing her thing willy-nilly. And police continue to investigate the incident. Anyone with information about the stabbing or shooting should call the Violent Crimes Tip Line. I think people, hear this over and over and over, and they're like, yeah, even if I do share a tip, what's it matter? What's it going to do? And the answer to that is, I'm not sure. Does that help? Do crimes ever get solved by a tip? Maybe they do. So I guess keep calling in your tips if you've got them. But for the rest of us, we're kind of like, oh, yeah, I'm not sure if I want to get involved with that. An anonymous tip, that does make sense. But the crime down in Portland that recently happened, guy breaks into a condo and just starts tossing stuff, breaking all the glass, and has a 3-hour, showdown with police, and just some wild, just on a bunch of drugs, who knows what, meth probably. You've just got this stuff ongoing, and a lot of folks are just like, big city crime. This is not big city crime. This is some Wild West type stuff with AK-47s and stabbings thrown in by convicted felons. I mean, that's just what we know. So how's this going to go? It's going to get worse before it gets better. And I will cover it right here on News for Reasonable People. Now, you might think that this is going after a topic that, that's real estate guys shouldn't be covering that. I think more real estate guys should be covering this, because this is the reality in our communities. And if you've got a house a couple of blocks down from a recent stabbing, that's not good. It's not good for the residents of that area. It's not good if you got to list a house. And I'm saying list a house just because, hey, there is a correlation here. Homes do get sold. People do move away from areas that have craziness going on. We know that for a fact. We know that. It's a statistic. So you've got this stuff going on, and there are areas where people don't have the ability to move out, and they're just stuck living with this nonsense. So long term, I think it gets worse before it gets better. And I hate to say that, but I think that's inevitable. Because what's going to turn it around short term? Hiring more police in Seattle? That's not a reality. That's not going to happen. It's going to take a long time to just get back to even, where you break even, like I said, with, and you lose, say you lose a dozen cops. Well, you've already lost, 350, 400, 4.25? Depends how you kind of look at it, retirement, quitting, lateral move, that kind of thing. But you're down so many cops. It's going to take a while to work that out. It's going to take a while for the city to figure out how they're going to handle these prolific offenders and what they're going to do. And, and then you've got jokers in the city council who are like, just let everybody go. It's okay. We just empty out the prisons. It's all right. It's okay. I mean, we don't want people in jail. No, I think if you were the dude who got his spleen ruptured by being stabbed while standing in the middle of the day on a sidewalk in a public street, I think you're going to say, yeah, lock her up. Lock her up. That's what we're talking about. That's what we're doing. Hopefully down the road, we'll see. I have no idea. I just know that these stories are not sustainable. And what do you do? I don't know. I guess you just keep fighting, keep battling. Mayor Bruce Harrell here in Seattle, I think he is doing a good job. He inherited a total hardcore situation. Let's see. You don't have, all the things that you would hope for as you walk into a mayor type position. He didn't have any of those. He just got handed hot potato after hot potato after hot potato. All right, Mayor Bruce, let's see what you got. And he is saying the right things, I believe. Whether or not he can actually get any action and get any traction during his term, I don't know. But I like the way that he's headed, and I like his approach so far. It actually seems to be, reasonable. There you go. That's it for me on this one. Thanks so much for being here. Love to have you subscribe if you see fit to doing so. If not, don't worry about it. But come back and watch another one. We'll talk then. Bye for now.